जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी। जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी। राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी। राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी। राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी। गोपीजन वल्लभ गिरिवर धारी। गोपीजन वल्लभ गिरिवर धारी। राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी। राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी। यशोदानंदन ब्रज जन रंजना। यशोदानंदन ब्रज जन रंजना। यशोदानंदन ब्रज जन रंजना। यशोदानंदन ब्रज जन रंजन। यमुना तीर वनचारी। यमुना तीर वनचारी। यशोदानंदन ब्रज जन रंजन। 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 यमुना तीर वनचारी। जमुनातीरवनचारी जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी गोपी जन वल्लभ गिरिवरधारी यशोदानंदन ब्रज जन रंजना 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 जमुना तीर वनचारी जमुना तीर वनचारी जय जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी गौर प्रेमानंदे हरि हरि बोल। जय ओम विष्णुपद परमहंस प्रवृत्तिकाचार्य अष्टोत्तरशत श्री श्रीमद श्रील अभय चरणानंद भक्तिवेदांत साईं महाराज श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय। अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय। नामाचार्य श्रील ठाकुर हरिदास की जय। प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद की जय। श्री श्री राधा कृष्ण गोप गोपीनाथ श्याम कुंद राधा कुंद गिरि गोवर्धन की जय। वृंदावन धाम की जय। नवद्वीप मायापुर धाम की जय। गंगा देवी की जय। यमुना माई की जय। भक्ति देवी की जय। तुलसी रानी की जय। समवेत भक्तवृंद की जय। श्री हरिनाम संकीर्तन की जय। ग्रंथराज श्रीमद्भागवतम की जय। इस्कॉन पीबीथी संस्थापक आचार्य श्री प्रभुपाद की जय। Go Premanande. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Sri Guru and Gauranga. Jai Shri Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tatodjayamudirayet Nashtaprayishva Bhadresho Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki Krishne Swadhamo Bhagate Dhanamajnanadibhisaha Kalau Nashtadrisham Esha Puranarko Dhunoditaha. Less people know that verse. You can Google it. You can Google everything. Where is it from? My friend. You have to read Prabhupada's books. Okay, we're on Canto 2 of the Grantharaj Srimad Bhagavatam, Chapter 1. And we're continuing our discussion of text number 11, which is a very well-known verse. I'll just chant it because we chanted it yesterday. Etan niravidyamananam ichchatam akuto bhayam yoginam nripanirnitam harirnamanukirtanam. And the translation again, O King, constant chanting of the holy name of the Lord after the ways of the great authorities is the doubtless and fearless way of success for all, including those who are free from all material desires, those who are desirous of all material enjoyment, and also those who are self-satisfied by dint of transcendental knowledge. We've read Prabhupada's purport, but we're going to return to it a little bit later. For the time being, we have yet to finish discussing Srila Jiva Goswami's extensive commentary on this verse. So we'll continue where we left off yesterday. Om Ajnanatimanantasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Gadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guroho Shri Utapadakamadam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagradatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitamscha. He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanusute Devi Pranamami Hare Priye Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Madgavirapi Gopala Swikuryat Kripaya Yadi Tadaiva Sambhayah Pitva Hrishyayustat Priyajanaha. And the end of his, I think it's the 10th canto commentary on this Bhagavatam, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur prays, My dear Lord Gopal, only if you accept my words, then they will be sweet like milk, and it will give pleasure to all of your devotees. So I'm praying like that. Can everybody hear me? Srimurti can't hear me. That's just because she's old. Like me. It gets harder when you get old. Every year you've got a little less capacity. Keep it in mind. You got to do this now while you got all the energy. Okay, so we're talking about the 10 offenses against chanting the holy name. This is from Padma Purana discussion between Sarat Kumar and Lord Brahma, as I recall. And we've gone through several of them, but where we left off yesterday, Jiva Goswami is saying that regarding the relief from all offenses by taking shelter of Krishna, Vishnu Yamala says, Mama namani lokesmin shraddhaya yastu kirtayet tasyaparadha kotistu kshamami eva na samshayaha. He who sings my names with faith in this world is forgiven by me for 10 million offenses without a doubt. Isn't that encouraging? But it also says that since criticizing devotees is very serious, we're talking about each of the offenses, we're beginning from the first. Since criticizing devotees is serious, the implication is that physical violence against devotees cannot even be described. In other words, if you criticize someone, that's one thing, but if you actually harm someone physically, sometimes it happens. Sometimes... Hare Krishna, you okay?
Yeah, I'm fine.
So, he's making that point. We know that from the story of Bhrigu Muni, that there are 3 levels of offenses one can possibly commit, right? The worst offense is you go and kick somebody in the chest. That's what Bhrigu did to Lord Vishnu. Not much better is if you tell someone that he's ugly or he's terrible or, I don't want your association or some verbal offense. And even a mental offense is not so good. We see these 3. So in the conversation between Markandeya and Bhagirath in Skanda Purana, it said, Nindam kurvanti ye mudha vaishnavanam mahatmanam padati pitribhi sardham maharaudava sangyate. That's pretty heavy. It says, fools who criticize great Vaishnavas fall into the hell known as Maharaudava, along with their ancestors. Can really mess things up in human life. Now, there's a very interesting verse, second verse of this quotation Jiva Goswami gives. Those who are listening know where it's from. Where is it from? You're not listening. No. Padma Purana is the 10 offenses, but Jiva Goswami is quoting illustrations of the seriousness of the first of those offenses. And he's just quoted from Skanda Purana. Skanda Purana. So, the Skanda Purana says that this conversation between Markandeya Rishi and Bhagirath, King Bhagirath, he says that somebody who criticizes a great devotee falls into the hell known as Maharaudava with his ancestors. So we may consider, we've heard about these 3 kinds of offenses that we've mentioned, but there's actually 6 kinds of offenses. Listen carefully what it says. Hanti nindanti vaidveshti vaishnavan nabhinandati krudhyate yati no harasham darshane patanani shata. There are 6 fall downs: killing or harming Vaishnavas, criticizing Vaishnavas, hating Vaishnavas, not welcoming them, being angry with them, and not being joyful upon seeing them. Something to think about. Actually, it's something to remember. It's a very nice verse. So 6 kinds of offenses. You can harm a Vaishnava physically, you can criticize him, you can hate him, or envy him. You cannot welcome them. You can be angry with them. Prabhu, you're nonsense. Or you can even not show joy upon seeing them. So it's said that hearing criticism of a Vaishnava is also a flaw. Nindam bhagavatah shrinvans tat parasya janasya va tato napaiti yah psopi yati atah sukratat chutaha. Anyone who fails to immediately leave the place where he has heard criticism of the Supreme Lord or his faithful devotee will certainly fall down, bereft of his pious credit. This is from the 10th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam. And this is Shukadev speaking regarding Shishupal. You all know the story. Shishupal was blaspheming Krishna for so many times, and everybody just wanted to kill him on the spot, but Krishna was holding them. So here it's stated, you'll fall down, sukritat chataha, and you will lose whatever pious credits you had if you tolerate blasphemy of a great devotee, pure devotee. An incapable person should leave the place. That means if you're not capable of actually countering the arguments and setting the person's mind right, if that's not possible, then you should simply leave. If capable, he should cut off the tongue. That's what it says. We don't know if it's really meant to be taken seriously. But if he cannot do this, he should give up his life, it's stated. Another very strong... the point is here that this should be taken very seriously. I think that's the implication. It's a very serious thing. So at least we should leave. But the best thing is if you set the person's mind right by preaching to him and indicating that, look, you cannot understand what's in another heart. Somebody asked me last night, how do we avoid the tendency to judge other people? So I told her, it's not like you shouldn't judge other people. The fact of the matter is you cannot judge people. You're incapable of doing so. You're not able to do so. Why? We don't know what's in another person's heart. It's invisible to us. We know what's in our own field of activities. Even that we don't know sometimes. People, very often, they don't know what they want. So what to speak of judging another person? We're just incapable of it. Vishnu can do that. Paramatma's easily. He's watching everything. So we have to keep that in mind. Now, another quote here from 4th canto, when Sati was, she became infuriated because her father was blaspheming her husband. And who is her husband? Lord Shiva. That's not to be taken very lightly. Karnau pidhaya nirayat yarakalpa ishe dharmavitar yashrinibhir niribhirasyamane chindyat prasahya rushatim asatim prabhushched jihwamasuna pitato visarjet sadharmaha. If one hears an irresponsible person blaspheme the spiritual master and controller of religion, one should block his ears and go away if unable to punish him. But if one is able to kill him, then one should by force cut out the blasphemer's tongue and kill the offender. And after that, one should give up one's own life. Who's speaking this? Who's speaking this? I just told you. Parvati says this. It's something to be taken very seriously. If not literally, but at least we should understand the gravity of the offense and by all means avoid it. Let's name names now. We don't like to criticize people by name, but we can praise people by name, can we not? How do we know that? We're not supposed to criticize people by name. We're supposed to criticize maybe bad ideas. But if you have to criticize or if you have to blame someone, or if you have to praise someone, which is better? Actually, it's described in the 11th canto. Paraswabhava karmani na prashamse nagarhayat. One should not praise nor criticize another. But of those two, it's better to praise somebody. So let me praise Vaisheshika Prabhu. I have in my whole life, I've known him for 50 years, and I've never ever once heard Vaisheshika criticize anyone. Not once. That is his nature. And therefore look at the result, how advanced he is, and how empowered he is. So, this should be taken very seriously. This first offense that's stated, we already heard from Skanda Purana, Paramama Paradham. It's the worst of all the offenses. So these are some statements that Jiva Goswami is giving us from 10th canto, from Skanda Purana, from 4th canto. Pretty heavy instructions, actually. Now, concerning the second offense, to consider the names of Shiva and Vishnu to be the same, it is said, this is Bhagavad Gita, chapter 10, text 41. Ring any bells? What's chapter 10 about in Bhagavad Gita? Vibhuti Yoga, right? And what does Krishna conclude in that chapter? Take a guess. Good guess. No. The one before that. Yad vibhuti mat sattvam shrimad urjitam eva va tattadevavaga sattvam mama tejom sambhavam. What does it mean? When you see something beautiful, when you see something powerful, when you see some great opulence of the Lord, then you should understand that this is springing from just a spark of his tejas, just a spark of his power. And so this applies to demigods, that's the implication. Lord Shiva is so great, beyond our comprehension actually. There's nothing he can't do for you virtually. But he's getting that power from some place. Just like we hear in the Brahma Samhita about another great demigod, Lord Shiva's son. Who is his son? Well, he has two sons. Ganesh, I'm thinking. So what does Brahma Samhita say about Ganesh? He gets his power for removing obstacles from worshipping Lord Narasimhadev. He's a bhakta of Narasimha. So it's the same idea. Brahma bhavoham api yasya kalah kalayaha. This is from the Srimad Bhagavatam 10th canto. Balaram speaking. Balaram, Lord Balaram. After Samba was abducted by the Kurus, there was a big scandal about that. But he just happened to mention in passing, Lord Balaram, that great devatas like Brahma and Shiva and even the goddess of fortune and I are simply parts of Krishna's spiritual identity. Balaram says this. So, another quote. Yat chaucha nisrita sarit pravarodakena tirthena murshni adhikritena shiva shivo abhut dhyatur manah shamala shaila nisrishta vajram dhyayet chiram bhagavatas charanarvindam. For a long time, you should fix your mind, as long as you can, on the lotus feet of the Lord. How do we do that in Kali Yuga? Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama. Automatically you will see the lotus feet of the Lord if you're chanting Hare Krishna. It's automatic. Chaitanya Charitamrita says so explicitly. All right. When we were chanting Jai Radha Madhava, when we were singing Yamuna Tira Vanachari, I thought of these two pictures here, so beautiful. The cooling, wonderful, pure water of the Yamuna. Automatically you can remember. One should meditate continually upon the Lord's lotus feet, from which the Ganga flows and gives extra blessings to Lord Shiva on his head, and whose thunderbolt is released upon mountains of sin in the meditator's mind. This is Kapila Muni speaking to his mother. Mountains of sinful residue that's in our heads and in our hearts. It's destroyed, just like a thunderbolt can destroy a mountain, just by chanting the holy name, Kapila Dev says. Finally, we have Lord Brahma speaking. Srijami tanniyuktoham haro harati tad vashaha vishvam purusha rupena paripati trishakti dhrika. I create under his order. Shiva destroys under his order. Holding his three energies, he protects the universe as the Paramatma. And Rajam dravayate yasmad rudrastasmad janardanaha. These are another quote long quote, so please listen. Ishanad eva cheshano mahadevo mahatvataha pibanti ye naranakam muktaha sangsara sagarat tad adharo yato vishnuho pinakiti tatah smrtaha shiva sukhatmakatvena sarva sarodhanadharaha kriyatmakam imam deham yato vaste pravartayan kritivasas devo virinchishcha virechanat brahmanat brahmanamasao aishwaryad indra uchyate evam nanavidhaihi shabdair eka eva trivikramaha vedeshu cha puraneshu giyate purushottamaha. So beautiful. Because he drives away pain, Lord Vishnu is called Rudra. Is Vishnu very widely known as Rudra? No. Who's known as Rudra? Shiva. He's explaining here, we'll hear later on, all these names of demigods, they're actually names of Vishnu only. And we only give them to demigods because the demigods are empowered by Vishnu to perform those functions. But actually everything is coming from Vishnu only. There's only one God. This is the thing. People think Hinduism is henotheistic, many gods. No, it's monotheistic, strictly speaking, but people have misconceptions, as we discussed yesterday. Worship of Lord Shiva looks just like worship of Vishnu, but he's different. He's just a devotee. Not just a devotee. Devotees are great. In fact, Lord Shiva says worshipping the devotees are even better than worshipping Lord Vishnu. That's why the confusion is sometimes it comes about. But mainly it comes out because people are not reading Prabhupada's books. So, because he's the controller, he's called Ishana. Is this another famous name of Lord Vishnu, Ishana? Sometimes. But often we hear this is Lord Shiva's name, right? Especially in South India, when you say Ishwara, who are you talking about? Lord Shiva only. But actually Ishwara is Krishna. Because he is the greatest, he's called Mahadeva. Are you getting the idea? Because he's called Pinaki, or the holder of the trident, because he's the support of all persons who, liberated from the ocean of samsara, enjoy the spiritual sky. He's called Shiva because he is the embodiment of happiness. He's called Hara because he destroys everything, takes away everything. He's called, and Krishna says that in Bhagavad Gita, no? Mrityu sarva harashaham. Krishna says it. He's called Kritivas because he lives in and operates the body which produces action, Kritya. He's called Virinchi because he extends beyond. He's called Brahma because he expands. Now we're talking no more about Shiva, but Lord Brahma. Actually, we're talking about Vishnu. This is the point, the whole point. He is called Indra because he has power. What does Indra mean? The king. That's the topmost person is called Indra. Thus, the one Supreme Lord is glorified by various types of names in the Vedas and the Puranas. This is a quote from Brahmanda Purana. Brahmanda Purana. Now, in Vamana Purana it said, Yastu Narayanadinam nam nam anyatra sangshayaha anyanam nam gatir Vishnu eka eva prakirtitaha. There's no doubt that the names of Narayan are used for others, but Vishnu alone is glorified as the shelter of all the other names. This is the point that he's making. Now in Skanda Purana, Vrate Narayanadini namani purushottamaha adaranyatra bhagavan raje varte swakam puram. Except for names like Narayan, the Lord gives his other names to others, just as a king, apart from his city, gives other places to his ministers. Everybody who has studied Indian history, for example, you know, what do they do with their sons? They send them to the outlying areas. Not only to keep them away from the palace, because sometimes in history the son will even kill his father to get the kingdom. That's how much love there is in this material world. But also to rule on his behalf. So in this way, Vishnu distributes his authority to these demigods likewise. Brahma Purana says, Chaturmukha Satanando Brahmana Padma Bhuriti Ugro bhasmadharo nagnaha kapaliti shivasya cha vishesha namani dadao sakiyani api keshavaha. The Lord gives some of his particular names to others. To Brahma he gives the names Chaturmukha, Shtananda, and Padmabhu. To Lord Shiva he gives the names Ugra, Bhasmadhara, Nagna, and Kapali. So these are all the quotes that Jiva Goswami is giving to enlighten us about how the Lord and the demigods are not absolutely one and the same. Ekala Ishwara Krishna Arashabhritya. Chaitanya Charitamrita tells us very neatly. There's only one Supreme Lord, and everybody else is his servant, even though they're worshipped as if they're independent gods in ignorance. But actually they're all devotees. So, he who sees by intelligence that Shiva's qualities and names are different from Vishnu, arising from some separate Shakti, is also an offender, since it's well known that Vishnu is ultimately everything. Are you catching this? He's not saying that Vishnu and Shiva are absolutely one ontologically. You understand the word ontological? Means, in essence. It's not that they're absolutely one and the same, even though the Skanda Purana is telling us this. They're abhinna. But they're abhinna in the sense that they're both on the same page, so to speak. I think we described this adequately yesterday. Lord Vishnu is controlling everything. He's the master and the enjoyer of everything, as Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita. Who knows a verse to support this from Bhagavad Gita? Lord Vishnu is the master, the enjoyer, the controller of everything. Yes. Very good. Bhoktaram, I'm the enjoyer. Yajñatapasam, of sacrifices and austerities. What's the next line? Sarvaloka Maheshwaram. Here's that word again, Maheshwara. I'm the supreme controller of all the worlds. And Suhridam Sarvabhutanam. I'm the friend of all living entities. This is Krishna's position. So, all others are his servants, including great demigods. But we cannot see the demigods also as independent of Vishnu. This is the irony. We don't see them as absolutely the same, but we don't want to see them as independent either, because if you see them as somebody who's got some separate power from Vishnu, that means Vishnu has some kind of competitor, right? Even if he's inferior competitor, but still, this is not right. Actually, the power is all coming from Vishnu, only Vishnu. This is the proper vision. And this is the idea behind all these quotes. So absolute identity would have been expressed by adding the word cha after Vishnu. Shivasya Vishnoscha in this quote. But the superiority of Vishnu is indicated by the word Shri in front of his name. Shri Vishnu. That means he's special. The word Shiva in Shivanama Parathaha, the ninth offense, refers to Shiva, but it's Vishnu's names, because we've already heard from Brahmanda Purana a minute ago that one of Vishnu's names is Shiva. So, what is that? Dhya bhinnam. Yata kyatim yatik katamusadena. Shivasya Shri Vishnor yaihe gunanamadi sakalam dhya bhinnam Vishnu. Dhyabilan, what is it? Anybody know the verse? I've got an over 60 brain, so. Dhya bhinnam pashet sakhalo harinama hitakaraha. And also, Ashraddhadhane vimukhe shrinvati yashchopadesha shivanama aparadhaha. We're talking about aparad to the name of Shiva, but that name of Shiva means actually Vishnu's name in this context. So this is the point that he's making. Okay. So returning to Jiva Goswami's commentary, we're finishing up, I think, the second offense. Now, the criticizing scriptures is discussed. Jiva Goswami seems to skip over this Gururvagya, so we'll say some more about that in a moment. But criticizing scriptures. This refers to Pashandas. Who are the Pashandas? What do they believe? Pashandas. Huh? Huh? You're speculating, my friend. You're not giving an answer from Shastra, are you? Right? You have to admit. Prabhupada says in chapter 17, text 15, whatever we speak about spiritual life, we have to be prepared to back it up. In 1976, there was a court case involving ISKCON because people claimed that we were brainwashing impressionable young children. And devotees were all afraid of this. Supreme Court, they were only 20 years old. But Prabhupada got enlivened by this. He thought it was great. And he encouraged the devotees, you take some of these tables into the courtroom, put all my books on the table, you enter this as Exhibit A. And then anything anybody says, you just pick up the book and show them what it says. See? This is 5,000 years old thing. So Prabhupada got very enlivened by that. But the idea is that Srila Prabhupada, at that time, he said, you should know my books the way a lawyer knows the law books. Lawyers have to memorize so many things from the law. Otherwise, how can they function? And questions after. So anyway, if... Akya?
Anyone who thinks that Narayan or other demigods are equal to Narayan is a Vishnu.
That's right. That's the standard definition. People who think the demigods and Vishnu are equal, but here he says, this refers to people who are worshipping, say, Dattatreya and Rishabdev. What makes them Pashandas, according to Jiva Goswami? They don't accept the Vedic conclusions. This is a very important point. We should take note of this. What's the definition of an atheist? I'm hearing different answers. What do you say? Doesn't believe in God. That's what you'll find in Merriam-Webster's Collegiate Dictionary. He doesn't believe in God. Who else said something over here? Yes, this is actually the Shastric definition of the atheist. He's also called Gnostic. And these philosophers, not only Dattatreya and Rishabhadev, but even Buddha, incarnation of God, he's preaching Gnostic philosophy, atheism, because they don't accept what the Vedas say. If we do not accept the Shastra, then that is the definition of atheism in this tradition. We have to recognize that. So it's a very serious thing if we criticize any Shastras. Now there's two kinds of Shastras. What are they? Two broad categories of Shastras. Shruti and Smriti. What's the difference? Shruti means the four Vedas, including the Upanishads, because within the Vedas we find so many Upanishads. That's unauthored. It's called Apaurushaya. Nobody wrote it. It's eternal. Even Krishna didn't write it. It's eternal. And the Smriti is also Shastra, but the Smriti is written by a fully purified person who is simply representing the teachings of those Shrutis without concocting anything. So therefore the Smriti is equally authoritative with the Shruti. And that's why they're both considered to be revealed scriptures. Now I'm going to take this a step further, even though it's a little bit of a digression, because it's also the tradition that just as the Smriti is recognized because it transparently represents the Shruti, so in the same way, the authorized devotee or saintly person who is transparent as well, representing the teachings of the Shruti and Smriti, their words also become equally authoritative as Shastra. And Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur has in fact said this about Narottam Das Thakur. That's why we always point out, Narottam Das Thakur, he wrote this song that we sing every morning at Guru Puja. You have no idea how deep this song is. But Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur had an idea, and that's why he chose to write he wrote a Sanskrit commentary on a Bengali song. That's pretty unusual, because he recognized it's the same. Now, I'm just going to take this a step further, and then we'll return to the discussion. What happens if you have an authoritative acharya making some claim for which there is no evident shastric basis? Then is it authoritative or not? Somebody in ISKCON recently published a book about this that you might have seen. And he claims that Srila Prabhupada's statements for which we don't find shastric support are not authoritative, and you're free to reject them if you like. This is what he says. Is that true or is it not true? What do you think? Not true. Yeah, is that because we're messianic followers? Or is it because we've heard from authority? It should be because we've heard from authority, not as a cult. We're not just blindly following. But the fact of the matter, this is the justification of that. It is called shishtachara. Shishtachara, or the behavior and the teachings of persons, even though you may not find any shastric support for it, because the shastras may have been lost, that happens. But if that person is authoritative, then what he's saying is still, it's considered to be equally binding, legally binding as Shastra. Sometimes we said yesterday it's called aitihyam, and this is what Krishna tells Uddhava in the 11th canto. Anybody know that verse? Shruti pratyaksham aitihyam anumana chatushtayam. He doesn't give 3 pramanas. We normally hear 3. What does he give? He gives 4 pramanas. So what's the 4th pramana? Aitihyam, which means it's shishtachara. Traditional precedent, parampara convention, you can say. There are some qualifications that we have to discuss about that, but since it's a little bit off topic, I'm going to leave that for now. But it's a very interesting topic, because sometimes we have disagreements about what the Guru and the Sadhu and the Shastra says. And so you're supposed to reconcile those, but how do you do so? Sometimes the only reference that you have is this shishtachara. So it's very important. It can help us. All right, so this is criticizing the Shastras. We have to be careful not to criticize Shastras, either the Shruti or the Smriti, and we mentioned yesterday, Smriti includes the Dharma Shastras. There are so many of them. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, I think he mentions 20 or so of them, a couple of dozen. But the main thing is Manu, and everybody respects Manu. So much so that the Taittiriya Aranyaka, this is Shruti now, Taittiriya Aranyaka says, whatever Manu says is medicine. So we cannot reject. It's not allowed. It's prohibited in Shruti, what to speak of anything else. And that's why we see Srila Prabhupada endorsing throughout his books. But we become Bhashandas or atheists by rejecting these principles. Okay, so that's Shruti Shastra Nindanam. Shastra, we mentioned also yesterday, but you might not have caught it. Shastra is a synonym for Smriti. Also, Shastra has many meanings, but one of them is that it's as a synonym for Smriti, in particular Dharma Shastra. You okay? Need water? Yeah. Can somebody get her some water? You're okay, okay. Right. Now, what's the next offense? Arthavad, we discussed yesterday. It means to think that the statements about the powers of the holy name are just exaggeration to get you to chant. So we can make more followers, so we get more donations, right? This is the mundane mentality, and it goes on. Sometimes people are like that. But actually the fact of the matter is that the holy name is that powerful, and you don't know how powerful the holy name is until you chant it. Raise your hand if you've chanted Hare Krishna. Of course you've chanted Hare. Why are you doing it unless you're getting something from it? So this is the idea. We don't need to really dilate on that too much. Kalpanam means to concoct some understanding about the holy name, or as we mentioned already, about Krishna consciousness in general. It means to give some other meaning to the name in order to minimize the name's glories. Vyasadeva himself says in Kurma Purana, Deva drohat guru droha koti koti gunadhikaha jnanapavado nastikyam tasmat koti gunadhikam. Offending the Guru is billions of times worse than offending the Lord. Denying scriptural knowledge and not accepting the authority of the Vedas is 10 million times worse than offending the Guru. I guess we're still kind of referring back to this Shruti Shastra Nindanam. Did everybody get that? Should I read it over again? Offending the spiritual master is billions of times worse than offending the Lord. But denying scriptural knowledge and not accepting the authority of this Shruti and Shastra is 10 million times worse than offending the Guru. So 10 million times, billions. Be careful, my friends. Don't be so foolhardy. We'll see what happens to this person. No disciplinary action, I think, is necessary. It will be taken care of. This person who's saying this nonsense stuff about Srila Prabhupada. So, after hearing the glories of the holy name, Ajamila said the following in order to show his previous state of depravity. I will certainly fall into the most terrifying hell where those who destroy dharma and are full of lust undergo torture by Yamaraj. He was thinking like this. But later he says, when he realized the greatness of the name, although I'm most sinful, I must have done something auspicious to see the best of the devatas, that means the Vishnu Dutas, by which I've become joyful. Oh, we've run out of time, sorry. I promised I would be very strict about cutting off at 8:30, but we're still not done with Jiva Goswami's commentary. All right, so we're up to the seventh offense. You, please, all of you tell me what to do about this, because tomorrow is supposed to be what class? Tomorrow's Bhagavatam class also. Huh? Monday is Chaitanya Charitamrita. Yes. Yeah, so you have to do your service. I'm sorry, we will stop here. Does anybody have any questions or comments on anything we've discussed so far? This Prabhuji? Bhakta Mike. Bhakta Mike is coming to help you. That comes from Janardhan Maharaj. Does Janardhan Maharaj ever come here? Janardhan Maharaj, does he ever come here? No, I think he goes to Canada mainly. He says this is Bhakta Mike. Bhakta Mike facilitates the hearing and chanting process. So,
Hare Krishna Prabhu. So the first offense we heard about was not to criticize devotees.
No, the offense is to criticize.
Yes.
The instruction is to not criticize.
Not to criticize, yes. We also hear from the nectar of...
I think like this because I'm an editor. If you say it the wrong way, it can be really consequential.
Yes. Yeah, so we don't want to criticize devotees. But we also hear that there are 6 loving exchanges, and one of the loving exchanges to share our heart and confidence.
Yes.
So if there is some difficulty with a devotee we are facing, how can we still share our heart and not criticize that devotee?
Without offending. Yeah, it's a touchy process. You have to do it very gingerly, as they say. And it's not offensive if you have some doubt about some specific individual and you need to voice it to get your doubt resolved. But it, of course, should be done very confidentially. That's guhyam akhyati prachati. And you don't want to go out on the internet and voice your doubts there. Because that will definitely constitute Vaishnava Ninda, for which we've already heard the reactions, and it's pretty heavy stuff. So please don't do that. But it's no offense if you have some genuine doubt, and for the purpose of making advancement, you're trying to clarify, what should I do about this? It's valid, because we have to discriminate. Discrimination is a bad word in English, but actually it's everybody discriminates. You have to. I mean, you have to know what to do and what not to do. You have to know who to hang out with and who not to hang out with, and you have to know what to eat, what not to eat. This is all discrimination. Vivek, it's called in Sanskrit. It's not a bad word in Sanskrit. So, Madhyama Adhikari status means that discrimination is at the forefront, because you've got to really strategize about how to make spiritual advancement practically. And you have to make practical decisions that are based on intelligence. So, that's okay. Does it answer your question?
Yes, Prabhu. And the other piece was about, not being joyful when we see devotees.
Yeah, that's pretty frightening, isn't it?
Yeah. So if we don't get along with some devotee, how can we still be respectful?
You have to take shelter of your intelligence and understand on the basis of your faith that this person is chanting Krishna's name. Out of all the people who live in DFW, this person is chanting. He's better than them. I don't know what's in his heart. I have a problem with him. Maybe I don't even have faith in him completely. But at least he's chanting Hare Krishna. You have to respect that. Rupa Goswami says. This is what? The 6th verse? 5th verse? I don't remember. Upadeshamritam. You mentally. Manasādriyeta. So, that's the idea. Is that okay? Simple question, simple answer. Kunti had a question or a comment? And Kunti doesn't require a bhakta mic.
Atheist. Srila Prabhupada defines, atheists do not accept God anywhere, so atheist is a different thing. Atheist is atheist. And then he quotes Bhagavad Gita 7:15, Asuram Bhavam Asrita. So, I was just thinking about it.
Yeah, the Asuras, they don't accept what the Shastra says. It's the same thing. Whether you call it God or whether you call it Vedas, it doesn't really make much difference because they're non-different. Anyway, so, yeah. Rasraj?
So, this is regarding the second offense. On one side, we see that, as you're quoting, names of the demigods, or the demigods themselves, represent Vishnu. We also hear Lord Chaitanya mentioning Nam Namakari Bahuda. So the question arises sometimes in discussions, well, why can't we chant the names of the demigods when we understand that they are actually representing Vishnu?
We want to plant seeds. We don't want to water weeds. So, especially sometimes in public programs, I see even ISKCON devotees doing this. And Durge, Jai Ho. Yeah, it really should not be so because it just reinforces the misconception that they're all one and the same. Yatomat tatopad. It doesn't work like that. So, to give knowledge is very important. And we have to be very careful not to, humor people in such a way that they don't become freed from their misconceptions, because they will continue committing offenses. These are offenses. And they may be chanting, but they're chanting offensively if they're not making a clear distinction. The Mayavadi chanting actually is the very worst thing. So these devotees who are going to yoga studios and doing this kind of thing, it's very dangerous. You really have to be so careful with that if you're going to do that for whatever reason. I personally don't see that those people are all that receptive. But Prabhupada even goes so far as to say in Chaitanya Charitamrita regarding the sannyasis at Kashi, Mayavadis, although they were chanting the holy names, they didn't get any spiritual benefit from it. None. Because their chanting was mundane. They're thinking Chaitanya, they generally don't chant Krishna's direct names, his Vraja names, but even if they do, they just don't understand, and so they can't derive very much benefit. Maybe after several million years they'll get it, but it's dangerous. Is that okay? Anything else? It's 8:42. Do we stop now? Srinath Krishna, you want to? You tell me, am I allowed to? Don't want to get in anybody's program. Shall I stop now? Somebody tell me yes or no.
We should stop now, please. Thank you.
Sorry?
We should stop now, please.
Okay. The authority says stop now, so I'm stopping.
Those who want to continue having a question and answer session.
Yeah. The rest of you are all free to leave. That's another way we can do it. So, okay. Thank you very much. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Hare Krishna. Prabhuji and Mathuranath, please don't run away. Out of respect, I want to take your question. Okay, so that's his question, Srinath Krishna.
I want to ask about the Pramanas that we're stating. We see that Bhagavatam is stated as Amala Purana, the spotless Purana.
And sometimes the reading is instead of Amala Purana, it's Amala Pramana also. Dono theek rahega.
Yes. But we see the Acharyas quote from so many other Puranas also.
Yes.
In terms of even proving the point that Srimad Bhagavatam is trying to make. So how do we understand?
We understand that they're all authoritative, but none of them is giving this thing in highly concentrated form as the Bhagavatam does. That's the whole point. What is that? Nigama kalpa taror galitam phalam, or dharma prochita kaita votra parama nirmat saranam satam ityadi. These things are stated early on in the Bhagavatam because the Bhagavatam is really special. That's why it's just heads and shoulders above everything else. Other shastras are fine. They're authoritative, no doubt. And we quote them to, substantiate what the Bhagavatam says, that's fine. But you don't find any shastra that really focuses so much on the ultimate goal of life in the form of Krishna Prema as Srimad Bhagavatam. That's why it's Pramana Mamalam. Spotless. Spotless, another way, amala, mala. Mala means what? Filth. This is spotless. It is stainless, unsullied by what? Karma, yoga, and jnana. It's only bhakti. Other shastras are not like this. That's the glory of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Is that okay? All right, so then I think it's time to stop. Hare Krishna. Oh, one more? But Mathuranath only allowed me one more question. Yeah.
Hare Krishna. Regarding second offense,
Jorsay, please.
Regarding second offense, we should not treat demigods on the level of Krishna. But in some kalpas, when there is no proper jiva to come as Brahma or Shiva.
We're not talking about that. Yeah. Sometimes Krishna will take the form of Brahma or whoever, and just, because there's nobody fit to do it. So what's he supposed to do?
So
things have to go on, so he has to do it himself.
So the holy names are eternal. So are these instructions for 10 offenses are also applicable in all the kalpas or only?
No, all the time. Why are you asking?
Because in some kalpas, Lord will come as Brahma. So
no, but these names we've already, maybe you missed this part, we've already described from Brahmanda Purana and other sources that all these names of demigods, they're not demigods' names, they're actually Vishnu's names. But Vishnu shares them with the demigods. Because there's no source of any of these. How do you name a person in Sanskrit, generally? You name a person after some attribute that he has. But all the attributes are coming from Krishna, right? Dharmothapapanishayastrutayastapangsi brahmadikita padagavadayash jivaha yaddattamata vibhava prakata prabhava govindam adipurusham tamaham bhajami. What does it mean? Whatever opulence anybody has, it's just given to them by Vishnu. It doesn't matter whether you're a cockroach or Indra. It just doesn't matter. Everybody from top to bottom is being empowered by Lord Vishnu. And therefore those names can only belong to Vishnu. But Vishnu is kind, so he shares his names with other demigods, and they even accept worship on his behalf. But they're not the same. And if we have that understanding, then sure, it's fine to chant Shiva, 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 even in public. But nobody understands this, because devotees are not preaching widely enough. So, generally if you go out in kirtan and you're chanting Shiva, 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 people, you're going to raise some eyebrows. And, frankly, anyway, that's the recommendation of this Kali Santana Upanishad is specifically Mahamantra. That's why in Vrindavan, nobody can chant anything, only Hare Krishna mantra. They have a strict rule. Just like here we have the strict rules, and at 8:30. So in Vrindavan, only Hare Krishna. You can't chant anything else. So there's a reason. Take?
Thank you, bro.
All right. So thank you all very much. We'll Maybe, how should we do about it? Should we continue this discussion at some later point, or just... Y'all want to hear more? Tuesday, okay. And tomorrow is some other thing. So yeah. So Tuesday, yeah. All right, thank you. All glories to Prabhupada. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Hare Krishna.